Hello everyone, this video today is about ANSI ANAB and IAF. The American National Standards Institute, who took over complete control of the American National Crediting Board in 2018, and the International Accreditation Forum, incorporated in Delaware, which is a repository for all international and national accreditation bodies, where ANSI ANAB are underwriters, which they take all legal responsibility for the IAF membership. 2019 unveiled as anti-American in court documents by QA expert Daryl Guberman. What I did in this is I asked, when they were trying to get us to mediate, I asked for a mediator who understood and knew about ISO certification without the factor of them being intertwined with ANSI ANAB. I also spoke about the factor that ANSI and ANAB were involved with the IAF. At that time in 2019, you will see Zhao Jinwu, a communist Chinese national, had the chairmanship that was handed to him by Randy Doty in 2015 to 2021. I am not going to read this legal document. If you want to see it, I will gladly email it to you, 203-556-1493. or Daryl, D-A-R-O-L, TQRS at yahoo.com. Let's go back to the beginning, shall we? When I opened my business in 2011, 2012, we opened up an accreditation body, actually a registrar accreditation body, and we gave a speech at the American Society for Quality. The American Society for Quality, they sent a Dave Levy, and this guy who sued us, he filed bankruptcy for $632,000, was complaining so much that the ASQ told this guy to go see us and see what he can do as far as unhinging me, which he did not. And he came up to me after this and he said, "Daryl, I can't do this. You're a smart guy." And I say this because look at what he said. He said, "We have no problems with what you're doing, Mr. Guberman. In fact, ANAB supports you." ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation. Been around for 100 plus years, has federal agencies and corporations on board. And I'm not going to go into the big litany of this about all the intertwining alliances, but you have Randy Doty, who at the time of 2015 was the vice president of ANAB, chairman of the IAF, and also on the principal on the IAF 990 tax firm. That means he controlled the whole mechanisms. He handed over leadership to this communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who was also at the time the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services. In 2017, Zhao Jinwu, as the Chinese National Accreditation Services, stood in the laboratory in Wuhan, China, and he was also the chairman of the IAF at the time, handed over a quality certificate for laboratory. Now, mind you too, Zhao Jinwu is mandated by his country of origin, Communist China, to take our data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. Also, in 2017, Randy was on the Department of Homeland Security, which we will show you, and he was being advertised as the vice president, though he was the technical advisor for ANSI ANAB, and also he was the principal on the IAF tax report. While Zhao Jinwu, who's mandated to take our data, sat on the IAF, Randy was sitting, being advertised on the Department of Homeland Security, who has a Mr. Phil Matheson. Mr. Phil Matheson, here he is. Mr. Phil Matheson, that's Department of Homeland Security. They sit on ANSI too. Mr. Phil Matheson at the time was getting $262,000, and his title is Executive Director of Office of Standards, U.S. Department of Homeland Security. By the way, they got hacked a lot between 2015 and 21. We have the documentation. This guy gets that salary, and at the time when he got it, it was considered a royalty payment, but they changed it over because I exposed that. A royalty payment is a payment that the IRS has no function. Is it going to be taxed or not taxed? It all depends on how it's written when they're given that check of $262,000 plus his federal salary. You also have the factor the Department of Commerce, who has a National Voluntary Laboratory Program, National Voluntary Laboratory Program, which certified the Dominion voting machines, which in 2017, everything happens in 2017, a very extensive article came out that they said it was very hackable. Mr. Gordon Gilliman sit there. You also have the NIST MEPs, 50 strong in all 50 states. They get both state and federal funding, where 64.85% of their funds goes to pay their personnel and bonuses. Isn't that nice? And the bitter dregs are left to the manufacturing community. Now you want to know why our manufacturing community is bad. Well, what happened is this. Randy, and let me bring Randy out. Randy, after he promoted Zhao Jinwu, wrote this: I am also very pleased that my successor as the IAF chairman is Mr. Zhao Jinwu of the China National Accreditation Services for Conformity Assessment. He brings a wealth of knowledge, and he was with us since 1994. Isn't that nice? Now, this guy who sued us, this is what Randy wrote us, and you tell me if there's some sort of affiliation there. This is what he wrote. This is a relationship. In fact, in 2017, I was in Chicago. We had a conference call with him, and I said, you met this certain person, didn't even say the guy's name. You met this certain person when you were getting your chairmanship for the Inter-American Accreditation Cooperation, IAAC, which also sits on ANSI's board. He was taking that from Alina Martinez, a NIST employee. See how NIST, they're all involved together, Department of Commerce. And what happened is in the morning, he took the ISO 1345 certificate for medical, so that this way the IAC granted them to go do 1345 inspection and certification in South America. Okay, so when I called him, I said, congratulations. I understand a friend of mine was down there and you met with this guy. He said, you're a fruitcake. That's exactly what he said. In fact, I have the email. If you want to see that, I'll gladly send that to you too. This is what Randy said back in 2014 to us in an email when he was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IAF, and also the principal on the IAF tax report. He said, we do not recognize the certifications accredited by accreditation bodies that are not members of the IAF. And of course, we do not have anything to do with non-accredited certifications. That is for the individual user and marketplace to decide. Right. In 2016, because we were showing the issues like with Boeing had a supplier notification that came out in 2002 that said if you are ANSI ANAB accredited, just send us your AS 9100 certificate, which is for aerospace, the international standard, and then just send us your parts in. And we don't have to send any sort of inspection from Boeing into your facility. And also, on their supplier portal, on Boeing supplier portal, it stated must be ANSI, ANAB, or international equivalent. And you're going to see that the international equivalent could be, Iran or Pakistan. Now, we were basically doing these videos. We had over 3,000 videos on our old YouTube channel. We took them down after this lawsuit because I said, this is BS. We started up our channel again. It's out there. They always say the sweetness is the second time around, and we've been doing those videos because we even have more data, more information. So what Randy did was when he was a technical advisor, 2 years later, you saw that they don't recognize anything, no accreditation bodies. But this is what he sent us as the technical advisor. He said, but we recognize and accept that there are conformity assessment bodies and accreditation bodies, such as your body and your accreditation body, that are not part of the IAF and ILAC structure. Yet if you look on Boeing's supplier portal, it's a monopoly. They call out specifically ANSI, ANAB, or internationally equivalent. They call out specifically on the 2002 supplier notification must be ANSI, ANAB. So they're basically stacking the deck. Why? Because Boeing sits on their boards. You now have this. Randy invited us to join, either ANAB or IAF or both. But how? Ladies and gentlemen, You tell me how we could do this. How we can do this as a proud American when he handed over the leadership in 2015 to this communist Chinese national. Do you think I, as a proud American, want to get involved with this shit? You gotta be kidding me. And here's Zhao Jinwu smiling away, giving a certificate. And by the way, there were some specialists from the United States that went to Wuhan, China in 2017, or 2018, sorry. And they came out and they said, the scientists there said, we need technical people. We need people, trained technicians. We need it. We need it. Well, the CDC, which sits on ANSI as well, came out with a training document in 2019 May. And it stated, importantly and emphatically, the most important item in a bio-level 4 lab. And by the way, that document, that technical document, training document, was for virology labs in China. But only Wuhan, China was mentioned. Isn't that tender in a virus-ridden society? Nice. So anyway, what happened was, this training document stated that, emphatically, that the most important part for containment is to have trained, competent technicians to watch over the lab. So he basically gave a certificate that was meaningless. And to further add credibility to what I'm saying, is in about 2018, a Miss Pamela Sale, the vice president of ANSI ANAB's accreditation for laboratory, stated under deposition that one of the issues, and I'm going to add phlebotomy and bio-level 4 labs and around the world, one of the issues is that there is no commonly agreed upon set of standards that forensic labs, bio-level 4 labs, phlebotomy labs around the country and world have to follow. Instead, there are informal guidelines that labs can choose to follow or not. You also have ANAB sitting on ANSI's board. You also have 7 different registrars that sit on ANSI ANAB's board. The funniest one is BSI, because they sit on ANAB's board that can grant, suspend, and withdraw certification. So you basically sign the cert off and you can take it back. How about Boeing? Boeing is the same way. Boeing sat on that board too, that can grant, suspend, and withdraw certification. Unbelievable. They are underwriters, and this proves it. This is a standard operating work order for the State Department. You can look at this number. But just to add credibility to what I said about them being underwriters, it states, and this means it's a fact, that on a federal contract, it states ANAB is an underwriter for the International Accreditation Form. ANAB and ANSI have over 10 different registrars that can issue an accreditation, ANAB accredited, in China. ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. They also, during the time when Zhao Jinwu was watching over the IAF, incorporated in Delaware, no less. And by the way, Lockheed was sitting there too. Well, that's another story. But here they are. And who was sitting as the equivalent in accreditation to ANAB? You have Pakistan and Iran. Iran, who most recently took... They basically are financing Hamas. So any one of you who have an ANAB accredited certification, you know, those 7 registrars and others that are ANAB accredited, I guess your surveillance audit, your recertification audit, your certification audit, every time you pay for it, they might be financing Hamas. How do you know? They sit so close on the IAF and they're equivalent in accreditation. Now we're going to go into the brass tacks. After I saw that thing about Pamela Sale, what I did was I had to do something. I looked and I saw A2LA, which is an accreditation body that many federal agencies use, and others. It's an accreditation body for laboratory. So what I did is they also sat on the IAF. So what I did was I exposed that factor. I said, how could you have ANSI, ANAB? They're all sitting together happy on this board, because you also have ANAB, who could also certify labs, and you have ASCLD Lab, which is owned by ANSI ANAB, that can also certify labs. So they're buttering their bread 9 times to Sunday. So what we did is we came out with that, we told it, and then Ashley Morton from A2LA contacted us and said that A2LA and ANSI are 2 separate entities unto themselves, or 2 separate accreditation bodies in the United States. One doesn't sit on the other's board. And as you can see, that's a bullshit thing. All of a sudden, after I came out with that factor about A2LA, I get a call from this guy over here. And let me play it for you. Because, here it is.
This is Russ Cheney. Please leave a message and I'll return your call as soon as possible. Record your...
Half nut, fuck you.
Half nut, fuck you. Half nut, fuck you.
Okay? So what happened is, this is ANSI's mantra because Russ Cheney is the chairman of that organization. So what happens is we have to gaze upon Mr. Jim Tassett from Lockheed and Mr. David Calhoun over here, who's the Boeing guy. They too sit, as I've showed you in many videos, Boeing sits on ANSI's board, and also Lockheed does. So what that means is by this guy saying half a nut, fuck you, to me, and let me play it again for you.
This is Russ Cheney. Please leave a message and I'll return your call as soon as possible. Record your... Half nut, fuck you. Half nut, fuck you. Half nut, fuck you.
What I did is by him saying that as the chairman, and these guys know they're the CEO, what they say is they are the mouthpiece of the company, and those that sit on the board are affected by what Russ Cheney says. So basically, Jim Tassett said, let me play it for you.
This is Russ Cheney. Please leave a message and I'll return your call.
This is what he said to me.
Record your...
Now you have David Calhoun. This is what he said to me. Maybe he said it twice because Boeing I've been watching. So what I did was I sent a letter to Joe Batia. Joe Batia sent the letter off to their attorney, Jameson Carroll. What happened is Jameson Carroll said this, and I'm going to play you what Russ said.
This is Russ Cheney. Please leave a message and I'll return your call as soon as possible. Record your... Half nut, fuck you. Half nut, fuck you. Half nut, fuck you.
I think you've had enough time to read it. Let's go a little bit further. That was in 2019. In 2022, 3 years later, I put a booklet in that had 54 pages, 16 letters of recommendation, because I saw an advertisement on the ANSI website that were accepting director-at-large nominations. I figured that I would probably be able to get in there and change the whole half a nut fuck you mantra, especially to clean up the reputation of Jim Tassett and David Calhoun, who sits on ANSI's board, who must acknowledge the factor that Russ Cheney, the chairman, sets the stage, and what he says affects those guys. Wouldn't you say so? So I put this in. I had to answer 9 questions, and I answered them as to what Daryl Guberman can do for ANSI. Well, guess who was the nominating chairman? Let me just put a little mark here so that, there you go. Take a good look at who was the nominating chairman. I'll hold it there for a second. Okay? And that's that. So, needless to say, they did not accept me. The reason why I do this is because I always believed when opening up this business that they needed a second pair of eyes, because right now at Boeing you do not have it. You haven't had it since 2002 when they put out a supplier notification that said, give us your ANSI ANAB certification. Yes, we sit on the boards, we do all this stuff. Just send us your certification. We accept it, check it off as long as it's ANSI ANAB accredited. They also use the online system supplier authorization called OASIS to also verify it, so they don't have to, like Lockheed and Boeing, do not have to send any type of source inspection out to their suppliers. Well, but with Boeing in general, just send us your certificate, send it here, check it off. You can send us all your parts, flight safety, and they've been doing that for 22 years, since 2002. Sure, they've done a little bit of sample inspection, but that cannot save you. When, by the way, Boeing was also caught fudging documentation. They were also caught most recently, look it up, $8.1 million Boeing fine for their composite facility, their Bell Boeing composite facility for the V-22 Osprey. Okay, they got caught. From 2007 to 2018, 11 years of fudging. I'm going to stop here, but you know something? When you have a guy who's the chairman of ANSI ANAB say half a nut fuck you, Jim Tassett and David Calhoun, and you don't force him, and that's what I wanted. All I wanted was an apology. In October of 22, I went to ANSI and I picketed them with this exact sign. This exact sign, and we probably will go there this spring again because all we want is a apology letter. Big men apologize. Little men say this very easily. Little men say this.
This is Russ Cheney. Please leave a message and I'll return your call as soon as possible. Record your...
I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you, and remember this from David Foster Wallace. I'm sorry for the length of this, but I had to get this out because you have Jim Tass and David Calhoun. That's like them saying half a nut fuck you to me. That's very unprofessional. And you know something, if I was the board members on Boeing and Lockheed Martin, I would say you got to get ANSI ANAB to write that guy a letter. He deserves it. But you know something, the truth will set you free, but not until it is finished with you. David Foster Wallace. And I will say this in my conclusion. From me to you, and this is who I am. I don't know the fabric that holds you together, maybe a golf cart, I don't know. It is impossible to comprehend the moral mischief, if I may so express it, that mental lying has produced in our society. When a man or woman has so far corrupted and prostituted the chastity of their mind as to subscribe their professional beliefs to things they do not believe, then they have prepared them the commission for every other crime. And I thank you.